Hello, my name is Dane Winn. I'm doing the animation section of this masterclass. Um, I've been in the industry now for nearly 10 years. Most of that time spent at Blue Zoo Animation Studios in central London. And then I've worked at a couple of little places as well. I kind of got my start straight out of uni. I was very lucky. I got a degree in animation at Bristol, and then put my showreel together and sent that off to Blue Zoo. And luckily, they were hiring junior animators for a production, and so I got hired there pretty much straight out the gate. So I was very lucky. And then I kind of worked my way up into a lead role. And then in recent years, I've moved across to being a director in the commercials department, where I also kind of animate and offer sort of generalist skills as well. I'm kind of one of those people that, from a very young age, was kind of passionate about animation. I think it started with Wallace and Gromit and stop motion and things, and then with Pixar kind of coming out in sort of '95 with Toy Story, I think that really captured my imagination for sort of 3D CG animation. Um, and then I kind of just hit the road running, hit the ground running with that. Just kind of trying to learn as much as I can, get my hands on software, find workflow videos or books, everything. And it was all really like about the craft for me as well, even from an early age, and kind of understanding the principles of animation and things. And then, yeah, I kind of was always doing that, through my teen years outside of school, and then kind of went to college to study it, and then university. So yeah, it's always kind of, I can't really remember a time when I wasn't interested in animation. So that's kind of I guess my field of expertise when it comes to these classes, where I can maybe offer the most constructive advice. Um, so yeah, hopefully it goes well. So animation, and its sort of bare essence, it's moving things about. It could be motion graphics, it could be ships flying around, but more predominantly, it's character animation and performance and acting, and it's kind of a key part of our pipeline to tell stories. We're not in the comic book industry or the illustration industry. We're in the moving picture industry, and so animation is a really important part of how we kind of tell the stories and how we engage the audience, and communicate. It's the part in the pipeline that kind of comes after rigging, after they've put all the controls and everything into the models. We then manipulate that like a kind of like an armature puppet, to try and get the best performance we can out of it. Then it moves off into lighting and effects, and further down the pipeline, where it kind of gets rendered into these beautiful images that you end up seeing. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the area that we're involved in, and I feel like I find it a really fun part of the process because you get to learn all these various things, from principles of animation to body mechanics, to sort of pantomime acting, to kind of advanced sort of close-up acting. And there's a broad range of styles. There's squash and stretchy, really cartoony, snappy stuff. There's more kind of subtle downplay performances that you see, and then you see all the way through to sort of visual effects, which are like really close to realism, and kind of creature stuff as well. So it's a really kind of broad, interesting kind of part of the process, that we're going to be kind of exploring a bit today. And yeah, so hopefully what we're going to be making is going to give you a bit more of an insight into that specific part of the process, and yeah, I don't know, maybe inspire you to have a go and try and make something yourself. Okay, so what I thought would be kind of a good little exercise to do, as this isn't too long, and I kind of wanted to create something from start to finish, so you can really kind of do it yourself and kind of see the entire process, unedited. So what we're going to do, we've got this little girl character here I've made, really simple rig. There's probably a few issues with the skinning and things, but I think we can still get a pretty good performance out of it. So what I thought we could do is just have this character jumping up on the spot, and yeah, just kind of take you through a workflow that I use to achieve that. Something to really bear in mind when you're making a piece of animation is the context, and it's important that you know the character's motivation and you understand what's going on in the scene and before and after. so that, this character, for example, we want her to jump up with lots of energy. She should feel springy and youthful and energetic. We don't want her to kind of jump like an old man. So it's important that you kind of think about those things when you're kind of creating the performance. So to start with, I've created this little Blender scene with the character already linked in, and I've got my camera set up. And it's really important to do this to understand where your camera is. The storyboards and the layout team will often establish this for you. They'll figure out the composition and obviously what that does for the storytelling as well as the performance. But the reason it's important to know that before you kind of start jumping in and animating is because posing is super important when it comes to the movement. Understanding what the character is doing, like how their body is positioned, and it might sound like common sense, but it's amazing how easy it is to kind of get it wrong and make things kind of obscure other things and not have a clear silhouette. So that's why now that we know where the camera is, we can really kind of consider that as we're doing it and make sure that everything is really readable to the camera. So I'm gonna jump in and kind of talk a bit about what I'm thinking as I go. So we grab the whole rig here and go to pose mode. So here we're really exposing now the whole kind of character controls. There's actually more than this. There's controls to really let you like bend the limbs and things like that, and add a lot more squash and stretch. But certainly my first pass, I don't want to kind of concern myself with too many controls. I want to get in there quickly and just start moving the character around and reacting to it. And then I can always layer in a bit more later on. So to start with then, let's have a look here. I've got a couple of things I need to do first. So if you go to your edit preferences in the animation tab, if you set this default interpolation to constant, so this means that every time you make a new pose or a new keyframe, it will hold that position. It won't the computer won't try and interpolate or like blend between key poses. It'll just kind of hold it there. So it's a bit more like a drawing that's sort of held on screen for a number of frames. So we want to do that first. And now if I press A, I can select all my controls, and I'm just going to press I, and that's going to set a keyframe on every control. There is actually something you have to do to make that an option. If you go to your key map, type here keyframe, and you can see here insert keyframe buttons, and you want to make sure it says this, anim keyframe insert button. If you don't do that, I think you press I and then you have to choose all controls, which is a bit of a pain. So this just makes it just like a tiny bit faster, which that might not sound like a lot of work on an extra button click, but once you get going, it really can be. Cool. So where were we? So select all controls, press I to insert keyframe. And then I've also turned this on, which is auto keying. And that is just because every time I move something, if that's off, if I then move my timeline, it won't remember where it was. So that can be a real pain. So make sure you've got that on. Okay, cool. So let's start off then. Let's try and put this character in a somewhat neutral pose. So you can see that I'm just pressing R to rotate the screen. If I press it twice, I can kind of rotate freely. And it's the same principle for grab. I can kind of move to the camera there like that. So I'm just going to put the arms down. Something I like to do as well when it comes to animating like the elbows, I actually like to make sure I'm using the correct axis consistently. And that's because later on when we end up smoothing this stuff, if you've been using all different kinds of axes, then the computer might get confused, and suddenly like an elbow, like a joint, a bend that was there and there, you would think it would just do that, but it might end up like swiveling all the way around because it kind of has seen you've used different axes to get there. So it's kind of a good practice, I think, to try and get into a habit of just using a single axis. And you can set that to local here as well, so that that's clear throughout the workflow. Okay, cool. So I'm just trying to put in just something simple. just trying to break the symmetry of the character. You know, you don't want to, when it comes to posing, it's really important to create strong poses, and contrast is a principle that we are constantly thinking about. And I think the more you animate, the more the kind of principles of animation become kind of subconscious to you. But contrast both in one pose to another, but also within a pose. You know, so you don't want to have both arms like exactly identical. You know, I could turn on this mirror option here and animate them, pose them together, but that won't result in a particularly appealing performance if I did that. Okay, so I'm just going to give the head a little bit of rotation. Yeah, we just got something like that. I'm not trying to make it too elaborate. Just something to break us out of T-pose, really. And also always trying to bear in mind the like center of gravity, make sure the character always feels balanced, unless of course they're sort of mid movement, mid jump or something. But if they're stood still like this, and again, you know, I mean, arguably I could have this kind of at an off balance position in this camera, but as long as it's working to camera over here, the camera that will end up being rendered, that's really where I'm mostly concerned. The rules are different, obviously, for like video games and things. They need to work 360. But we've got a little bit more wiggle room in film. Okay, cool. So I'm pretty happy with that pose. So that's just my starting position. Just out of force of habit, I'm just going to grab all the controls and press I again, just so I know I've got that keyframed. And now I'm gonna move forward 3 frames. So I've set up some hotkeys to help me with this, and you can do the same if you want. So if you go to key map. Frame offset. Yeah, here we go. So frame offset. So I've put in these little keyboard commands to be Alt1 and Alt2. And that's just because I like to keep my hand generally on the left side of the keyboard. I've also set up my playback to be to just be the letter D on my keyboard. So with those combined things, I can kind of move it forward and backwards in the timeline, and I can press D and I can just play it back. And it's really fast. It ends up kind of being a bit like hand-drawn animation where you're kind of flipping pages. It kind of gives you that sort of mentality, which is really nice because, again, for things like contrast and just to kind of check where you've been and where you're going, I like to very quickly toggle those buttons. Okay, so we're going to go forward then. 1, 2, 3. I'm going in 3s because the way I like to work for something like this, I'm trying to animate straight ahead. So I'm creating poses where I'm keying everything, but I'm working in a kind of chronological way so that I can feel my way through the movement. And it just kind of, I find it gives me a slightly more organic performance instead of going from kind of the ground to up in the air, back to the ground and defining those poses. I would rather get my anticipation pose, you know, and then my midair, and then my landing, and then my kind of resting pose. I'd rather kind of work my way through, and then maybe I end up, you know, shifting them around in time, or you know, I'll do another pass and maybe I'll retweak those poses drastically. But to start with, I like to just kind of go through sequentially and just get my movement figured out with the main controls. So I'm moving 3 frames forward because I think, just taking a hunch, that's about as many frames as I'll need to get into my antic. So let's go and do our second pose. So I'm going to bring the body down a bit like this, rotate forward. I like to move between my 2 camera moves quite a lot. This one's great, obviously, for selecting the controls, but then this one's quite useful when I do want to rotate to camera exactly. And also just for review, I like to look and see what's happening in the camera at all times, really. So let's see. You're going to crouch down. You're going to kind of scrunch your arms in a little bit like this, you know, before you kind of push that energy out. So we're going to do something like this. Let's get that chest bending over. I've also got some nice squash and stretch controls in this, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of squash it down as well. A lot of animation performance can really be stripped back to kind of bouncing ball mechanics. You know, it's like, you know, Pixar Luxo lamp or something like that is, or there's a flour sack, I think, is the other kind of common iconography for kind of figuring out the animation principles. And it really does run through into like a full kind of humanoid physique as well. Like you're scrunching down, you're compressing the shapes. It doesn't always necessarily mean stretching things, but it's about creating the silhouette is a squashed silhouette and a stretched silhouette. You're kind of, it's more about the shape than it is the volume, if that makes any sense. Okay, cool. So I'm taking too long on this. I'm sure this will be over 25 minutes or whatever. But okay, cool. So we got something kind of like this. I'm also gonna. I really don't want these two arms to be too similar. Like I said before about symmetry, that one's got more of a bend to it, and that one's a little bit straighter, but still got a little bit of a hook in it, so we understand the direction it's bending. And then following that, I'm going to just move this leg out a little bit like this, and also I'm going to move it across just slightly. So just before the jump, she kind of just shifts her weight ever so slightly, just onto this foot before taking off. And I'm also going to rotate those hips a bit more down. Okay, great. Okay, so now again, I can Alt-1, Alt-2, I kind of snap between them really quick and be like, okay, that feels like it's working. That feels like she's moving down to a crouch position. I feel like this hand is maybe staying a little bit straight as it goes down. So it's gonna pop in here. Oops, and again, stick to my own rule. Use the correct axes for rotation there. Okay, that feels much better. Cool. Okay, so we've got a nice second pose. You can also do the face at this point. We've got a really simple face here, but it's normally a really good time to try and get those things that sort of tell the story in when you do your key poses. Some animators do like to sort of layer on the face later on once they feel they've got the body working. But I think especially if you are doing more restricted acting and it's a lot more in the face, I find it's really helpful to get all that blocked in right away. So I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's just do something really simple for this. I'm going to just move the eyebrows down here like this. I'm not going to do too much with their sort of macro controls. I'm just going to, God, you can see how badly I've rigged this. Dear, is that really what I did? I want to use this for something else, so I might have to fix some of this stuff a bit more. Okay, I'll tell you what, this is keeping them a bit more solid then for now. I'm also going to close the eyes, and I kind of intended this just to be a very simple squash. Can we do this on individual origins? There we go. Great. Cool. So she's kind of closing her eyes as she compresses. So you can see, the face is compressing as well as the body. It's all kind of working as one whole unit. Cool. So we go down like that. Let's go 1, 2, 3 frames later. And now let's get that stretch pose. So I'm going to rotate this back, lift it right up. I'm kind of just concerning myself with the middle kind of central mass to start with. I'll worry about the legs in a second. If you press Alt-R and Alt-G, it resets your translation and then your rotation, or the other way around, which is a really, really super useful shortcut to use. Okay, so again, let's check this camera. It kind of feels like she's moving back here, so I'm just going to make sure it feels like she's going straight up to camera. Cool, that's great. I think we could probably push it a little bit more, get her up like that. Really nice. I'm going to adjust the head here, so I might even lift that up a bit. I'm going to translate the chest up just a little bit, and then let's rotate this head back a bit as well, like that. So again, we're kind of creating contrast. Before everything was curled forwards, now everything's bending back. The arms are a bit more subjective because it depends whether you want to move in like that or whether you want to move up like that. So I think maybe for this you went like that. So maybe we go a bit more with the shoulders. So we might have to move the clavicles for this as well. Clavicles are a really interesting one because it's amazing how little you lift your arm before like the clavicle suddenly has to raise up as well. If you try and like just bend the arm, you really can't get that high. So it's important to really consider the clavicle movement when you are moving the arms around, because that can really help with creating what we call lines of action and making sure the kind of, what's the word? The forces all feel like they're kind of flowing together through the body. Okay, so let's speed this up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to open this arm a little bit here. Again, I'm sticking to the axis when it comes to the elbows. You might also notice I'm using two kinds of controller here. So I've got FK for the arms, but I'm using IK for the legs, and that's really because I've set it that way because of the kind of performance it is. I know that these feet are going to be contacting the ground, and so I want the computer to help me make sure those positions stay locked for when I do kind of move the body around. The arms, however, are always kind of free flowing. They never touch the floor, they never interact with anything. So I prefer for those to stay more kind of bound to the body, more parented to the body, to help me with my posing a bit faster. And I mean, any good character rig will have toggles to do both of those options. And sometimes you may even find you want to switch halfway through in the middle of a single performance. It really just depends on what's required from the shot. Okay, cool. So we've got these arms. They do look a little bit similar, so I'm going to raise this one up a little bit more. That's a bit better. Okay, I feel like we've got a good line shooting up there. Let's get the feet in some rough positions. So I'm going to start off. I'm just going to have them both kind of pointed down, but kind of a little bit more like inwards. Let's also make sure they have got a bit of stretch to them, just like that. There's a kind of issue that always kind of happens with animation, and that is what's called like the IK snap, and it's basically where this rig's actually not bad, the rig that's in this, because you can't really notice it, but it sometimes happens when the knee pops or the elbow pops, and you sometimes have to get in there frame by frame and kind of clean that up. But because this is so quick and snappy, I think we'll get away with it. So let's just go ahead and do this. So I'm going to just cheat this. I'm going to lower this leg a bit more. I'm going to raise this as high as I can. I still want to keep them both stretched because I really want to feel the energy of them both sort of pushing down. Okay, great. So we've got that pose, and now the face here. I might just tip the head a little bit more back, something like that, I think. And then let's get these eyes open. I think Alt S resets my scale, and then let's move the eyebrows up. So again, we're trying to find contrast in these poses. We've gone from like really close compressed face to big open eyes wide face, like that. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to just shift this leg out a little bit because I feel like I'm going a little bit at an angle to the camera. Great, so that's my third pose. I'm going to go again 1, 2, 3 frames later. Okay, I'm actually going to put in a couple more poses here. So, like when a ball bounces, you've got easing. So easing or slow ins and slow outs is another principle of animation, and it's the fact that unless you're a robot, everything organic moves, or everything in physics moves with momentum and acceleration and deceleration, and nothing just kind of stops in space and moves. And so in this case, a bouncing ball, if it just went up and down, that'd be like some very kind of linear motion graphics. But really, a ball would kind of have this kind of up arc trajectory to it, and kind of stay floating before it then accelerates back down to the ground. So same principle here. We've got this character jumping. So I'm going to go 3 frames forward, and I'm just going to grab the body and the legs. And I'm going to translate her up just slightly like this. Oh, make sure she stays aligned. Cool. Okay, and then this is going to be the sort of top of the arc. If you imagine the kind of up trajectory was kind of following like a graph. Okay, and then at this point, I think we'll have the sort of upper torso would kind of start to kind of accordion, kind of compress back into itself. So we kind of established that this leg was a little bit higher than that leg. So I'm going to just move in a little bit closer on this camera. So I'm going to move that leg up like this. This leg's going to be behind it, also folding up, but I kind of want to create like a nice sort of asymmetry with the way those legs are moving, just so it feels a little bit more natural. And again, just putting a little bit of a kink in it so I can tell the direction they're facing, and that's again consulting the camera that this is going to be seen in by the audience. Okay, so I think this head would probably keep going back just slightly. Just want to kind of keep that momentum going. And then the arms, I'm going to start to fold those right out. So we do something like this. And again, maybe I need to get those clavicles involved again. That's cool. Okay, yeah, that's sort of working. I might move that back a bit more. Or maybe forward, yeah. You won't always get it right, first time. I think it's, some artists, some animators like to sort of draw thumbnails out. Some people like to shoot video reference or go out and source video reference and use that as kind of a guide for sort of seeing what moves first and how the body kind of shifts its weight and things like that. I'm kind of just going off of a kind of a back catalogue of characters jumping in my mind right now. But that's where you can kind of, I guess, play around a little bit and experiment with with how it moves. It doesn't have to be quite as dictated. Okay, so I think that'll work. This might not work, but that's fine. We can tweak it as we go. Okay, cool. So I've got my fourth pose there. So if we just back the camera up, if I press D now, there you go. You've got this character kind of jumping into the air. Cool. I think it's working for what it is. I think we've got, definitely feels like there's some weight being pushed up. We're really feeling the squash and stretch. I think the eyes closing and opening actually is really helping us feel that. I think what I might do, even at this stage, is I'm just going to grab all the controls. I'm going to select all of these ones here, and I'm actually going to move them another 3 frames. Oh, sorry, not that one. Yeah, another 3 frames. So we've got like a slight pause before she takes off. You see that? So there's like a little bit of a hold, and then boing, we spring up. And that's just so that we really feel the anticipation, the kind of the energy contracting before it releases. Cool. Okay, so now we're airborne. Okay, so now again, like that ball, we want to come back down. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 frames later. Let's grab the main body control and the feet, and I'm going to start moving this down. So we kind of want to move roughly about as much distance to be covered here. We want to cover kind of coming back down. We obviously, it depends on frame rate and things like that, but and how you want to space the timing out. But I think for this to feel convincing, we'd need to have a similar kind of spacing for that. Okay, cool. So here, what I want to try doing is I want this leg now to kind of be going up, like this, and now this leg's going to be on its way down. So we get this kind of offsetting kind of gallopy legs. So now this leg is on its way down. I'm even going to stretch it down, so it really feels like it's It's almost like its feet are trying to push its way back down to the ground, you know. Cool, and then I'm just going to rotate. Where do we want to put this? Maybe we go out a little bit. Maybe that feels weird. Yeah, that kind of works. Okay, so now the leg's slightly bending out. Again, I kind of want to avoid it being direct to camera like this. I want to make sure that silhouette is reading clearly. I think I could also have it go that way, I think, but I kind of want to see if it looks good that way first, just because, I don't know, it just feels right to me, I think. Great, okay, so we're doing that. The arms, I think, my gut's telling me the arms are going to just keep going up. So we're just going to try and anchor them back a little bit more like this. You know, in my head, it's like arms kind of stay up this whole way. I think it'd be really easy to be tempted to, move them into like a new position or whatever. But sometimes, you don't want everything to move at once. You want to make sure that, because otherwise you end up kind of everything moving into one pose and moving out into another pose. Sometimes things need to kind of stay where they are. If I pick up my phone and then I pick up my kind of cup of tea, I wouldn't move both hands to both items and then, back together sort of thing. So it's kind of thinking about how you break up the body. And even in a really quick little instant little action like this, it's really important to bear those principles in mind, because, when you get through to the end and you've smoothed it all, those little things are really going to kind of help make your performance more believable. Okay, cool. I'm going a bit slow, so we're coming back down now. I'm going to translate the head up. Oops, just a little bit. And I'm going to grab this chest as well, and I'm going to move that up so we get a bit of a stretch frame. Yeah, just like that. Great. Okay. I'm going to leave the face for the minute. Okay, and now we want to go 1, 2, 3. And now we want that frame where we hit the ground just before we compress. If we go straight into compression, we'll have the whole character that kind of goes like this, down like that, and really we want dunk, dunk. So it's like that, rather than like that, if that makes sense. So let's do that. To start with, to make it really easy, I'm actually going to grab both my feet, and I'm going to go to this first frame. I'm going to copy that, just Control-C, and paste it. Okay, so now I know those feet line up with my initial posing. That's because I kind of want to create like a bit of a loop. I wanted to just keep jumping on the spot. So I'm kind of already establishing, okay, where do I need to get the body back to? Okay, so now we've got that. Bring the body down. Again, I kind of want to keep the legs straightened, just like this. Again, I'm trying to just make sure it feels like it's moving down straight. Cool. And then I also want to get this leg back up in the air. So, because again, I don't want them both to land perfectly the same. I want it to be that kind of overlap between the legs. And this is a really easy place to kind of establish that. Great. Okay. I don't know if I already do this. I'm going to stretch the torso up even more. Maybe even push it a little bit more. All right, that'll do. Okay, cool. And the arms, what do we reckon? I could keep them up even more. I'll tell you what, I might start to bring them down. So I'm going to just starting to bring them down, starting to bring the clavicles down as well. Okay, and the head, I think I'm going to rotate that back a little bit as well. Cool, and then I'm actually going to get the arms here, the forearms, and have them kind of like, so there's a bit of an overlap, so the forearms are kind of, there's a bit of drag to them. Yeah, just like that, perfect. Okay, cool, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and now we're down to the ground. So I want this foot now to be planted, back there. I want to have the body coming down like this. I want it rotating forwards. Think about the center of gravity. Think about the camera. I'm going to rotate the chest forward. I'm going to reset its translation. I could even squash it a little bit, maybe just a tiny bit. I'm going to reset the head's translation. I'm going to bring it forward, but I don't want to go too far because I think it might whip a bit. I'm going to translate that down just a tiny bit as well. Let's get the clavicles, reset those. We probably actually want to rotate those down just a little bit as well. Okay. Just so I know what I'm doing with the arms, I'm going to just reset them. Reset rotation, just like that. And now I'm going to start establishing a new pose with them. So I'm going to rotate these in, and I'm going to, I kind of want them to kind of go out and then come back in as we enter the rest pose. So I'm just going to keep them kind of like that. Again, I'm flicking back and forth. I want to make sure I'm consulting like where I've been and where I want to go. And here it looks like the arm's broken when it's like that, even though it's not. But to help with that, maybe we bend it a little bit the other way. And we create this sort of shape. It feels like it's quite long, doesn't it? So maybe I'm going to cheat that to camera, and I'm just going to, just by rotating it back more, we should be able to kind of make it feel like it's a bit shorter. Yeah, just like that. Perfect. Just like that. It's on Tommy Cooper. Okay. All right, cool. So that's down. We could also compress the eyes as well. I'm going to back up the body a bit here. Even though it doesn't have to work from this angle, I think it's, if it's easy to do and it doesn't ruin your kind of camera performance, it's probably good practice to do it, because you never know if you have to kind of twist the character or turn whatever comes next. You want to kind of put yourself in the best position to address that. Also, I'm being a bit cavalier with the camera, because also when it comes to lighting and shadows being cast and things like that, obviously, if you cheat it too much, then you're going to get a note back from the lighter saying it needs moving. Okay, cool. So we've got that pose now, and then we're going to go back into our rest pose. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to grab all my controls. I'm going to Control C that first frame, that first keyframe at the beginning here. 1, 2, 3 frames forward. Paste that in. Okay. So now we're going to get back into that pose, but I don't want to just snap straight back into it. I'm actually going to I want to do a bit of what we call a breakdown, which is where you go between your poses, these sort of establishing poses. You add what's called a breakdown pose in between them, and that's where you kind of define a bit more of like the offset. You define how you get from one pose to another, even at this micro level. Whether the arm is slightly overlapping more, the head moves first. You're kind of figuring all that out when you do your breakdowns. And I want to put a breakdown between these two, because I feel like that's going to feel very linear, just kind of popping back up into that position. I want maybe like the head to drag a little bit. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to move this. 1, 2, 3. I just like to work in threes. So we've got a little bit of a break there. And what I'm going to do is select all my keyframes. All my controls. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, halfway between the poses. Click on this, which is actually called the breakdowner in Blender. And now if I click and move it off to the right and then let go, I've now got this really, really useful tool. What this is doing is it's moving between the poses, and it's even got some overshoot. So I can go to you can kind of see up in the top left corner here, the percentage between the poses. And I can actually exceed those to kind of move into an overshot pose. I don't want to do that in this case. I actually want to kind of go about 50% like that. So now I've got this new pose that's between them where everything's moving. So now what I can do, that's kind of helped me get started, is I can now rotate this head forward. I can get that drag I was talking about. And I might even want to push it more than that. But now I know all the rest of the body is moving where I want it to move. I'm not guessing, because I think the danger can sometimes be that you get to smoothing it and because you've added more keyframes than you really needed to, and maybe you got some of them a bit wrong, and you end up with slight kind of wavy, weird, wobbly movement. And the breakdowner, or the tween machine, as it's also known in other programs, will help you kind of make sure those middle keys are actually kind of accurate to sort of 50% between them. Okay, cool. So now we've got this. Now, before I do any extra keys, I'm just going to show you what we've got. So we press play there. Great. So we've got this little character now, and she's jumping up and down on the spot. I feel like we've got the energy there. She feels quite heavy. I think she feels heavy because of the arc, how much time we spent up in that middle bit. The spacing, rather, that we used. Because when she hits the top of the arc, it's like she decelerates and kind of stays with that deceleration and drops back down. She doesn't have... I think if she had a more acute acceleration, she'd feel like a feather or something, something a lot lighter. I quite like the weight of it. I think it feels quite nice, but you could easily move that about. Okay, cool. So I'm going to do a couple of these breakdowns here. So, I talked about holding the anticipation. So what I'm going to do is go here, go 1, 2, 3, and I'm just going to set a keyframe on everything. And then I'm going to go back to this keyframe I put in before, grab my breakdowner, click and drag, and I want to go to about, let's say about 80, 85. Let's try 85%. Okay, so now we get most of the way there. And then what I'm going to do is, I don't want this foot to slide at the same rate as everything, so I'm going to actually just copy the frame in front of it and paste it there. So that foot gets there, but everything else continues just to drift into position. And I could even put just the tiniest little bit of overlap on the head, just like that. And I might also go ahead and grab my eyebrows and eyes, and do the same as I did with the foot. So I copy the frame in front, paste it there. So they're kind of there already as well. Cool. Great, that's working really nicely. So what I'm going to do now is just go to the very end, and I want to understand how this is going to end up in its rest pose. So to do that, I'm going to do one more pose. I'm going to define how it gets there. I'm going to put one more pose in. So let's go 1, 2, 3, set a keyframe. 1, 2, 3, back to this one. Go to the tween machine. Let's do like we did before, maybe about 85%. Oh, 86, that's fine. And then I'm going to, let's see, body goes up like that. What I might do is just keep her feeling a bit springy. I'm going to go to this pose here. I'm going to slightly move her body up. So she does a tiny bit of an overshoot. Sort of see that, and it then brings it back down. I'm also going to move these arms in here as well. So it feels like they kind of do a little bit more of a kind of octopus push. Cool, and then one last keyframe, I'm just going to grab all of that. Go to the very end here, set a keyframe. And then tween machine, I'm going to do again like 85%. And that'll just make sure everything just eases into the final pose. Cool. Let's see how that head moves. I might even do a little bit of an overshoot for the head, and then it comes back forward. Cool. Okay, so that's our blocking. We've really defined how the character is going to move, what the performance is. We've got keyframes and everything. We haven't let the computer do anything really yet, and that's working really nicely to camera. So let's save that. Right, now, this is where, if you're very lucky and you've done all that correctly, we can now select all the keys by pressing A down here in the timeline. Right-click them and go interpolation mode and Bezier. Click on that and hit play. he says, oh, make sure you've got all controls selected, then all your keyframes, then do Bezier. There you go. Okay, cool. So now we've got this character jumping up and down, and it's all smooth. And there's a couple issues. I think there's a couple issues with the timing, which we could fix really quickly. But you can really see there, like, because we defined everything in those key poses, the computer's not really surprising us with anything. We're kind of getting what we were expecting. Cool, so I'm actually going to grab all the keyframes on all the controls, and I'm going to, I think the problem is, during this time here, I think she needs to keep going up a bit. I think she's hanging in the middle too much. And we did kind of notice that, when we said it seemed a little bit heavy. So I'm going to move her a little bit higher. Let's see if that fixes it. She still feels like she's floating down a bit. Maybe we could add a lot more spring to this. So something we can do now, I'm going to show you the graph editor. So if you open this panel, and let's switch this to graph editor. Now I'm not super good at using this. So what we can do, oh dear, if we open the Z location of the torso, we've got the sort of torso root control and both feet selected here. So I've got that one. I'm just expanding them, and I'm grabbing. Oh, can I do that? Yep. I'm grabbing the Z location for all of them. So this arc here you're seeing in the graph editor, that is the up and down position. So we can see what that easing time is. So what I can do is if I grab these three keys, I've got three there? Yep. And then I'm going to press grab and Z. Oh no, is it X? No, it's Y. And Y. So now I'm snapped to the middle. So now what I can do is I can raise that up a bit like that. Or I can even grab all of them here, and I can move the whole thing up. So now it'll probably have a lot more punch. There you go. And it kind of keeps within the animation that we've created. Okay, so let's put that aside. That's how one way you can use the graph editor when it's a lot harder to eyeball it. So something else I think that's happening is just the timing of this compression. So I'm just going to grab all my controls, and I think it's this moment here. I think it's just a bit slow compressing. So I think part of that is actually, before I move that, I think part of it is actually to do with the feet. So if we go through frame by frame now, yes, so here's what's happening. So as the character is lifting up, you see how the feet are coming off the ground as well. They're not actually hitting that snapping point. So what I'm going to do is grab both my legs, both my feet. I'm going to grab that keyframe. Oh, and actually before you make any new keyframes, I forgot to say, go to your preferences, go to animation, set this to Bezier. That way now, whenever you create a new keyframe, it will continue that smooth motion. Okay, so we're going to copy that, go a frame later, paste it. So now our feet stay pinned just for that frame, and I think that's going to make all the difference. And now likewise, when we come down, I want that foot to be bang, straight down before the body comes down. Yeah, and that really gives it some pop now. Okay, cool. So I am still seeing that one little timing issue. So I'm going to change it because it's quite easy. So I think we're floating down just a little bit. So I'm going to go to, I think maybe, I'm going to grab all these keyframes, and I'm just going to nudge them back by a frame. Great. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. A little bit more cartoony. Cool, so we go back into layout, and we can go back to, I had the rig. Click on that one. Cool. So yeah, that's the animation. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you're able to kind of follow along, and hopefully recreate that yourself. I'll provide in the link the rig, and so you can create your own scene as well as this scene. Hopefully you kind of enjoy kind of creating this little performance. Cool. So now you've got this animation. You can really kind of see as well, like how you could explore with it. So you could try different speeds, and you can do this stuff really easily. Now, once you've kind of created your animation, so we go back still in pose mode. So we grab all our controls. We've got these keyframes down here. Let me just move my head a second. There we go. Stretch these out. Cool. So now we've got all these keys. We could, you could have a little play around with seeing like maybe different timing. Maybe you want to make this antic really quick, so you could just grab all the keyframes, just move them that way, hit play, and now you've got a really quick jump off. Maybe you want to like really drag out how long she spends in the air, so you can move all these keys down like this, and then increase your timeline to like 35. Play that back. And now there's like all this extra hang time. So there's a lot of things you can kind of do within this kind of framework now to push your animation and try out different things. So yeah, definitely play around with like speed and your spacing and like distance and things. You could play around with your poses. Maybe you want to like go back in and adjust these hand positions. Maybe we talked a bit about like whether the arms kind of go up like this. Maybe they do go out almost like a kind of a bird flapping motion, and I really like to try wherever possible to keep all my keyframes on all controls kind of together. That way I can really easily shift timing, and I can understand what like that keyframe means and that keyframe means. So it's really fun to then be able to go in and go, okay, so now I actually want the arms to be out like this at this moment. Now you've got this little like arm bobbing down movement. So there's a lot of things you can really play with within this. You could also play around with the squash and stretch. Maybe you want this to be really cartoony, so maybe you go to this frame and you go, right, I want that to go all the way up there, and then it really kind of accordions in and stretches out a lot like that. And looks a little bit weird, but maybe that's what you're going for. So there's a lot of things you can do to play with this, and also hopefully you've learned a little bit about that process. You can apply it to maybe trying to give the character a different sort of personality, or better yet, a different context. So maybe she's jumping over a puddle or jumping down some steps. Maybe a couple of jumps. It doesn't just have to be on the spot in a loop. All these principles. You could really kind of have some fun now, giving it a little bit more context. So it's no longer just an exercise, but there's kind of more of a scene that's happening. So yeah, definitely continue exploring this and have a play. So something else you can really do with this, beyond kind of exploring and taking it in different directions. You could also try pushing things within what you've got. It's something animators say quite a lot is, how can you push it or plus it? And it kind of refers to several things. One of them is just posing. Could this be a little bit more compressed? Could you be a bit more scrunched in? Could you push the squash even more? Can you push the silhouette? Could that be clearer? Would that work better? So we kind of talk about those sort of things. But we also talk about pushing timing. Like I said before about like the jump timing. Maybe you want to make that longer or shorter. It really depends what you're going for, what the attitude is. But there's always ways to kind of plus things and push them further. You can also push things in terms of like your workflow, how much detail you put in. And I think it's something I like to really do is, with more time, I tend to go through frame by frame, and I kind of check through with the whole performance and move things down to a frame by frame level if I feel like it could improve it. So like, for example, as we're coming down here, I've kind of done this a bit lazily, but the eyes kind of all close quite uniformly. So maybe I kind of go back here and I go, actually, let's have the eyebrows, stay up higher for longer for that frame, and then they come down. maybe I now offset this a bit by another frame, so they kind of come down a frame afterwards. And so I'm kind of just going through this whole thing now, doing kind of like an eyebrow pass. So here maybe I kind of decide, oh no, let's keep them moving down at this point. And then maybe I'm going to offset that frame, maybe by like 2 frames. So the eyebrows really have this sort of hang time. Or maybe I can even move them up like that as she's coming back down. Maybe I'll set a keyframe there, and then I'll go a little bit further. And then maybe here I really want to push them down. And then here now maybe I want to keep them holding back, maybe even go a little bit lower. And then again here maybe they hang back just a tiny bit, and then they settle afterwards, you know. So now when I watch this back, I've got this whole like layer of movement going on within those eyebrows, and it didn't take a lot of time, but you just kind of frame by frame and really just kind of figure out what it is you want to do and how you want each piece to move. And that can be a really great way to plus your animation and push it, you know. And you know, maybe you take this and you go, oh, you know what, this is a bit of a cheap trick, but you could grab all your keys, just offset them by a frame. So now you've really broken the asymmetry, and you can bet you don't even really see it, but you can really feel now that there's like a bit of an asymmetry going on in the face. You know, we've got this sort of left and right, like a real kind of nice malleable move to the eyes and the face. And it's kind of important to always try and like keep control, because sometimes when you're doing animation like this in the computer, and you get to a stage where the computer does sort of take over to an extent, and it interpolates between frames, you can sometimes wind up with something you didn't want, and that could be like a technical issue because something's rotating a bit weird, but sometimes it's just because you didn't quite define enough about the movement, for the computer to understand, So it's another great sort of point in time then to kind of go through and go, right, let me just specify exactly where I want this foot to go, and then that way you stay in control of that performance the whole time. Another thing you can do, there's a lot of great resources online, obviously, beyond just this. There's things like Anim Dojo, which is something the guys at Blue Zoo actually initiated, and it's a really great sort of affordable scheme to get kind of students and professionals kind of polishing their skills and doing exercises and getting feedback from professionals. And it's great because it comes with like lots of challenges, like creating poses and and kind of how do you get from point A to point B and things like that. So it's a really great way to sort of just practice your skills without like the pressure of like an entire shot, which I really enjoy. Push it. Cool. So I really hope you enjoyed kind of seeing this process, and I hope the animation I showed you kind of was clear how I kind of got there from beginning to end. It's really exciting at the moment because there's so many free resources and software available, and it's a great time to be learning this stuff. Blender is a completely open source free software. I've downloaded it because I've seen the things it can do, and it kind of really inspires me and makes me want to kind of create more stuff in my own time. So I highly recommend you download that and give it a play. It doesn't take too long to get going. And I've supplied a character rig along with this masterclass, and there's dozens of other ones online that you can probably get a hold of. So yeah, definitely get involved and start animating something, because it's a really fun profession, and it's a really kind of creatively liberating thing to be able to kind of bring something to life. And like I say, I think now that everyone's kind of got access to this stuff, there's really no reason not to just sort of give it a go and see if it's your kind of thing, because it might just be. Thanks.